Well, let's look at Chapter 2, Part 2. So we're on that section we left off, and we're going to start up at that section that is titled Acting Responsibly to Satisfy Society. So this takes, corporate ethics to the next level, let's say, from an individual level to the way that we actually run our businesses, where we can benefit society. And they talk about social responsibility. And I'll just read the definition for you here. Social responsibility, businesses' consideration of society's well-being and consumer satisfaction in addition to profits, right? So it's trying to do all of this at once. Consider our environment, our responsibility to our consumers, our employees, and all of that, as well as make money. And it can be done. I mean, there's lots of examples. I think in your text, or in our new textbook here, they, excuse me, they have that box called Going Green. They talk about thinking outside the box, and that's that box company. And I think I've got you guys reflecting on that, maybe in a journal or discussion board or something about that. Would you consider buying from a company that's doing things like the example of thinking outside the box? I think it's on page 42 in your book. And so how do we measure all of this? Well, we measure social responsibility in how much we contribute to the overall economy, employment opportunities, environmental contributions, and things like that. And if you look at figure 2.5, another big round bullseye, and it shows businesses in that outside layer and its social responsibility, that on the inside, it breaks it into those four quadrants, to consumers, to employees, to the general public, and then to investors and the financial community. Now, when they talk about investors, now if you're a privately held company, you don't necessarily have investors because you haven't issued an IPO, initial public offering of stocks and bonds, for example. Now, if you're an incorporated company and you have a board of directors to answer to, now you also have another layer that you are responsible to in how you run your business. Social audits, that's kind of a new term. We wouldn't have necessarily heard that term when I was first initially studying business back in the 80s. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I'm really old. Way back in the 80s. Oh my gosh. So we start with, or the book starts us then with that conversation about responsibilities to the general public, as in, public health issues. So when you hear, for example, whenever you hear a recall, it generally has some sort of problem or a health issue, if something is wrong or unsafe for the public in general. And so, for example, what was recently just got recalled? There's been a lot of meat recalls lately too, with something to do with the chemical that made it more red than it should be, something along those lines. And then we find out that these things aren't good for us. Obesity is another issue that this book actually talks about as well, and its relationship to how we make our products. I know that recently a lot of the I should say more of the larger chains are pulling food coloring and things out of their menu, out of their products, to make them more healthy, protecting the environment in general. We can think back to all kinds of examples where companies have just dumped their garbage, which was sometimes nuclear waste, right into our waterways and into our systems without any kind of regulation. With regulation, of course, we try to make sure that that doesn't happen on a legal level, but why should it happen on that level? Maybe we should do the right thing even when nobody's looking. At least that's what my mom used to say anyway, right? So protecting the environment. And you can read about some of the initiatives some of the companies have done in our book. How many of you have heard about, the recycling and using French fry oil and turning it into fuel? That was kind of big a few years back, and we're seeing more and more of it now on a larger scale because we've developed the technologies and the innovations to actually make it happen on a larger scale. I mean, look at electric cars. We've had electric cars since, I don't know, forever. I got to look at that. There's a really cool YouTube clip out there. It talks about the birth of the electric car, and it was shelved many decades ago, many decades ago. So it's not new. Electric cars aren't new, but having the technology to make it viable is new, like batteries, that kind of thing. Okay, most of you, if we think recycling, then we can kind of put this together when we come like being good to the environment, green marketing, sustainability. Those are all words that are in today's vernacular. It wasn't in my day. I mean, we did, recycling was on a completely different level than it is now. So it's completely different today. It's our kids are growing up with it. I mean, I look at my grandchildren. I have grandchildren from the age of like one on the way and 22 years old, and they don't know any different but to recycle. Like if they were standing with a empty water bottle in their hand, they don't know what to do with it if they don't find the recycle bin, right? Which is a good thing, right? Now, developing the quality of your workforce. Now you're thinking, well, what the heck does that have to do with social responsibility? Well, we're learning, and what we know over a competitive advantage is that, and the U.S. is starting to figure this out pretty quickly, that we're getting left behind when it comes to education and educating our workforces, and that businesses are going to have to become a little more responsible when it comes to education within the workforce, whether that's training or all out sending you to classes. I have a class on Wednesday. Most of the people there are all sent by their employers, because their employers are saying, listen, you need an education to be able to move up in my company. So developing that quality of workforce, we have to have some guidelines there as well. So if you look at, I think it's figure, where did it go? 2.6, the FTC guidelines for environmental claims and green marketing. When you look at the marketing and how you market your product, you also can think of this in the same way, and how you market yourself to get the best employees, okay? And I definitely wouldn't work for a company that wasn't using sustainability and recycling and all of that. And of course, with the high demand that we have for workers right now, because right now unemployment rate is pretty much flat. It's full employment, 5%, 5 to 6% is full employment. That changes everything. I think the book goes on to give other examples, obviously, of different company initiatives and how they're going to educate their workforces, and what kind of, long-term commitment have they made. Now, corporate philanthropy, when we talk about corporate, I can't say that 3 times. Being philanthropic means that you are a giving person, that you are considerate of charities and things like that. So corporate philanthropy is just the same thing. It's an organization that contributes to its communities, in which that it earns its products, or sells its products for profit. Oh my goodness. So a lot of times you'll see cause-related marketing. And that's where if you're wearing a pink armband or a blue armband, or your company gets involved in, breast cancer month, or heart attack awareness month, or whatever it is, Habitat for Humanity, Red Cross, people that are involved, let's say, there's a lot of companies, including Western, that teams of people will go and work with Habitat for Humanity. That's very philanthropic on a corporate level. Now, we also have then, as part of that quadrant, our responsibility to our customers. That's consumerism, right? Excuse me. So if you look on figure 2.7, you have consumer rights in the middle of the bullseye. So consumers have legal rights. You have the right to be safe, you have a right to be informed, you have the right to choose, and you have a right to be heard. And there are laws to help protect us in that way. And the book goes on to explain each one of these individually: the right to be safe, heard, choose, and informed. But one thing you have to remember too, like for example, the right to be informed. That's why we have rules about marketing, that there's truth in marketing and truth in lending. These kinds of phrases you might have heard. There's reasons for that, because it's not legal to tell you a product's going to do something that it's not. Now, they will push the limit with that. Like one of the biggest categories where you see that, the most violations in that, is with supplements. supplements claiming to do this and claiming to do that. And they get away with it for a while until somebody calls them on it, and then they will have to either recant, take back the statement, or they're going to have to republish or redo their marketing or whatever it is. And then the responsibility to employees, that basically means that's workplace safety, quality of life type issues, you know, ensuring equality or equal employment on the job. You know, you don't get to just hire all your cousins, you know, or everybody in your family. It's, you know, discrimination. So we don't discriminate in the hiring practice, okay? And there's a lot of laws. I mean, there's tons of laws to enforce this. And if you look at that one big, I got to make sure I'm on the same page in my book as your book. It's the table 2.2, I believe. Table 2.2. Yes, it is. Table 2.2. And these are laws designated to ensure equal opportunity for everyone. So, you know, we have this Civil Rights Act, Age Discrimination, Family Medical Leave Act. There's all kinds of different things. And if you ever take like my legal issues class, we'll learn more and more about this. It's very interesting. And we have the EEOC that helps protect us as an organization, or as an enforcement body, I should say, which is the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And this is the commission, or the body that enforces the rules to mean that you're not discriminated at work. And this book talks a little bit about age discrimination. And again, part of that is because we have such a different demographic mix than we've ever seen in the past. You know, we have a huge bunch of people in that category of the baby boomers that are retiring. They're in that retirement age category. Well, we can't discriminate against them just because they're old and just say, well, see you later. You're at the top pay scale, so we're going to bump you out and bring in a college freshman because we can pay them a fraction of what we're paying you. Well, we would, if companies would look at the statistics, you find out that when you do that, you lose money as well, because now the learning curve has gotten real steep than with the people that know their area, know their field. And then they do also touch base specifically on the sexual harassment and sexism section, which most of us are pretty aware of what that is. But believe me, you would think in today's day and age that it would be gone, that you and my grandchildren would not see, or my granddaughters would not see these kinds of things today, but they are alive and well. Believe me, take the legal issues class. I think you take a business law class, and I'm sure will talk about it in that class as well. That we learn that today, even with all the laws that we have, we still see a lot of those kinds of things in the workplace. So that's sort of the more specific areas when we talk about ethics in the workplace in part 2 of our chapter 2 overview. Well, and that wraps it up. All right. Next time should be maybe chapter 3, chapter 4, whatever we're on to next. See you then.